Figure. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today we've got Local Prepper on with us again, or I'm on his channel. It just depends on where the hell you're watching the video. I'm either on with him or he's on with me, one or the other. Tonight we're going to talk about some of the similarities between the Roman Republic, not necessarily the Roman Empire, but the Roman Republic, and some of the things we're seeing today, and sort of maybe even extrapolate that on and talk about, some things that could go on in the future, how things are different and how they're the same as far as, the Roman Empire and the things going on today. The politicians, it seems like, are 100% the same games, the same shenanigans, the same corruption, all that crap. But the difference is, it's not swords and shields anymore. So at any rate, in the chat, you know what I want to do? I want to see if this is going to work. So I'm going to put this over here. And if you guys in the chat, let me know. You want me to keep that little chat roll over on the side, or do you guys give a crap? But Plan B, what's going on? Tim, Tiger, Local Prepper, what's going on? Looking, Randy, what's going on? Looking in the chat and seeing that. Anybody's got any comments or anything like that, I'll try to throw them up here as well. Jammer's here. What's going on, Jammer? But before we get into that, you have an event going on. What are you pointing at?
Nothing. I'm distracting you.
Yeah,
it's my girl right there.
Dog and Ball Productions. How's it going? But you've got an event going on here in October, I believe, right? Explain to everybody October. What that's all about.
Okay, that is going to go October 12th to the 13th in Nebo, North Carolina. It's called Prep Stock, and what was it? I think you actually put it in the show notes. Prep Stock is the ultimate event for preppers, homesteaders, and survivalists because we are not vendor focused. We believe that your time should be spent learning, not buying stuff. It's going to be going in the hills of North Carolina. It's going to be super duper awesome. We're going to have a little bit of everything. I mean, we can go over the schedule later if you want to, but it's going to have everything but water bath canning, some leadership stuff, use of force. We have a lot of professional guys coming here. We're going to have McDowell County Rescue. We're going to have some gun guys. We're going to have a beekeeper. We're actually going to have like a real doctor who's going to talk about using herbs as true medicine treatments. So it's going to be freaking wild. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, no kidding. And what this is, it's an outdoor event, right? Where you go camping and it's not necessarily like we were talking a little bit before the show. You've got the convention center style shows where it's basically go in and buy crap is what it is. Look at all the trinkets and gadgets. There's a few speakers that are there. I know, a couple that go that are pretty good, but for the most part, it's go around. The last time Lisa and I went, which was a long time ago, go in, look around, leave a half an hour later and go, okay, that was cool. But I've seen all that stuff before. Maybe for the new prepper, something like that would be cool. Go in and see all those trinkets and gadgets and fun stuff. But what you guys are doing, and we were talking earlier, this is the third year. What you guys are doing is more of a like meet and greet type, get to know the people that you interact with online and all that, and actually learn preparedness, not just learn the gadgets, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Our focus is very community-based. When I say community-based, I do not think like kumbaya. I think the internet community, our internet data points are going to be touching, and it's going to be a great time because I've personally been to a lot of these events, and you normally end up with two different kinds. It's either the gears and gadgets like you were talking about, or it's the kind where you got the vendor who comes in and he sets up his tent, and then he teaches a couple of classes. And during the class, he says, hey, I'm Joe Schmo. I've got 30 years of doing this, that, and the other we're How cool am I? When we're done with this, come on over to my booth and I'll sell you stuff.
Yeah.
And we just, after doing that, after going to those events for years, we decided, you know what, we're going to do something completely different. We're going to make this so no vendor can come unless if you want to sponsor the event, You got to get up with us. We got to talk to you. And it's no joke, guys. We've got Jace Medical. I mean, the big guys. Jace Medical. We got Hardcore Hammers. We've got EMP Shield. Sent us like $1,700 worth of stuff. Refuge Medical. We got a couple other food guys. Oh, believe it or not, we actually got Grumpy Acres Farm to send us some of his magical freeze-dried Skittles. And so we're going to be giving away everything. We got fire starting companies. People love that kind of stuff. I have my own preference one. I say it's the best in the world, but other people disagree. So if they send us stuff to give away, because that's the magical word to the entire event, every single thing that the sponsor sent us, we're going to give away. We're going to have like these little stupid drawings that mean nothing. And we're going to go, hey, you win. There you go. There's your $169 survival hatchet. Boom, boom. There's your $500 EMP shield device. Those are the kind of things that we're going to be doing during Prep Stock.
Yeah, very cool. Hey, real quick, Jordan said in the chat that the chat screen shows way more than the comments than I can see. And the reason for that's why we put this chat screen up here, is because we're going to 4 different channels right now. We're on Local's Twitter and his YouTube channel. We're on both my YouTube channels. So if you want to, I guess, to consolidate, maybe everybody use the link in the description below. Go to Grumpy's channel, and everybody can chat over there, and you can interact with each other, or just kind of watch the side screen right there. But this is basically all we can do as far as letting you know, because we'll put comments up on the screen, and you'll be like, where the hell did that come from? That's why. So one last question on Prep Stock. Where is it located this year?
It's in Nebo, North Carolina. It's not quite to Tennessee, but I would say it's closer to Charlotte than it is Tennessee.
Okay. It seems like there's got to be a lot of competition out there. Everything's in North Carolina.
Yes, there actually is. And, that's one of the reasons that we're looking at actually having like a Prep Stock 2.0 that's specifically on the coastline, because there are no true prepper gatherings on the East Coast of the United States. It's really, really weird. It's always inland. It's always a couple hundred miles inland. There's like almost none on the coast.
That's because preppers are smart enough not to live where you're going to get smashed by a hurricane.
Hurricane? No. If you put your tinfoil head on and say tsunami, you can do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, like I said, that link is in the show notes, regardless which channel you're watching this on. You can go to the website, check that out, have a look at it. I'm sure. Yeah, subscribe to I was going to call you Grumpy. Subscribe to Local Prepper's channel, and I'm sure he'll have some more updates as the months go on with this and all that. But it sounds like a blast. Lisa and I just never get a chance to go. I'd love to go go to Grumpy's, the one that he does, the I can't remember what it's called now, up in Kansas. Yours, Vision Preparedness, does one as well, the bug out weekend or something like that. Yeah, it'd be cool to go to those kind of things, but Lisa and I are just kind of homebodies, and we got too many damn animals to take any time and go anywhere, but you never know. Yep. All right. So with that, I think, like I said, check that out. The link is in the descriptions, but in the descriptions. But I want to get to some of this Rome stuff, because I've been sort of thinking about this quite a bit lately, because I've been reading the book Mortal Republic, which is a pretty dry book, but it goes through the downfall, what led up to the Caesar taking over Rome, basically becoming a dictator, and the downfall of the Roman Republic. And like I said, it's pretty dry, but it goes through a lot of detail. It's sort of fascinating. Another show that's actually kind of decent, I don't know if you've seen it, is 8 Days That Made Rome, or something like that. It's
where's that at?
It's a really basic documentary. I don't know exactly. I think it's like TNT, or maybe it's PBS or something like that. But
okay.
It's this lady that talks about it, the 8 days that she thinks define what made Rome and all that. But she also goes into a little bit of archaeology stuff into it as well. So it's actually pretty cool. And she knows what she's talking about. So it's not a Hollywood made up BS story. but it is pretty basic. But this book, at any rate, goes through a lot of detail, and it talks about all the twists and turns that led up to Caesar being able to basically take control of Rome because of the nitwit senators and just the corruption, the greed, the economic situation, the disparity between the super rich and then the plebs, which were us, basically the average people, that just led to basically Caesar, and correct me if I'm wrong, but basically Caesar was almost accepted. It was like, it was okay because they had done such a crap job running the country that it was almost seen like Caesar was going to go in and sort of, I don't know if I want to say fix, but they were okay with him going and changing the whole system.
Well, yeah, and the thing about Caesar is that prior to him becoming dictator for life, he had actually done some really, really great things for the Roman people. And so it's like Caesar, he's the best, but you've got to remember too, when he was in his 20s, this guy was a hellion. And he just, well, let's just say that he did a lot of illegal stuff.
Yeah.
But, he had some ethics issues throughout his entire career before he became dictatorial. And, he basically bribed his way into office, getting another senator to do it for him, who's like the richest guy in Rome. He illegally ran legislation through the Senate. He intimidated his political enemies with threats of force because, if you have imperium, then you have control of an army or a legion or whatever, and you can we'll just march on your house and blow it up, or burn it down, things like that. He pretty much escaped any and all consequences of his actions on a technicality called imperium. He commandeered Roman resources for his own enrichment. He marched an entire legion into Rome, which actually made him famous. You've heard crossing the Rubicon because you weren't allowed. Roman soldiers were never allowed to be in Italy. So, and he actually declared war on a fellow Roman for his own political gain. With all that said, he actually did some great stuff after he did all that. But he had to do all of that stuff, basically bypass the system, rage against the machine, kill a lot of people. But he had to do that before he could do anything good for Rome, and it kind of blew up in his face in the very end. But he's a character. He's a historical character.
Yeah. Well, and the Republic lasted like almost 500 years, I believe, before before he took power, and then it lasted almost 500 more after that. So when you hear about the fall of Rome, it wasn't some sort of it was almost like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 falls of Rome's, and then it was sort of just a deflation. It never really fell. They sort of towards the end they split it up. They got so big that they had to split it up between like 3 different people or factions or whatever, and then those 3 ended up warring against each other, which sort of goes into why the United States, our government, may not want secession all that much, because that's what it would sort of lead to, is that we'll all play by the same rules, but then when it gets down to it, these power players that all want power and all want to gain, that's what it's always all about. It's gonna come down to something like that, where it's gonna be just infighting and things like that. So it's interesting though, because I think for us today, it's not the fact that, and I want to get your thoughts on this, as far as us going from this representative republic to some sort of dictatorship, which I think personally, I think is inevitable. I don't know when, but I think just the way that things progress and are progressing, and you see how the Roman Republic progressed. You see just societies all over the place sort of go in that direction, and us as people, we let it, because as long as like Nero in Rome, he said the bread and circus, right? As long as we're happy and content, we don't bitch too much. Yeah. But the second that things get too hard, the second when these politicians go a little too far with their greed, their corruption, and their games, that's when that's when the things start to happen, and they have to pull back, and it's more the things that affect us here. What are your thoughts on eventually moving to some sort of, and I don't know what it looks like these days because we're not back in 2,000 years ago, and you've got the whole world basically. It's not just one country, but what do you think the odds of the representative republic that we have now changing to something similar, or maybe even like the WEF type situation, the World Economic Forum? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people, I am far from a studier of Rome. I like to read the books. I like to know
me
what
neither.
happened. I love the stories. But one of the things that we have to understand is, and you kind of have to do a little bit of backstory. But so when Rome was first founded, okay, we're not talking about the wolf who suckled the twins and stuff like that, okay, because that was like way before that. But when Rome was actually founded, they actually set up a system of government after they killed a bunch of the kings, is what they did. And they were like, we're never going to be ruled by one man ever again. They have like a Roman saying for that crap. But they literally set up a system of government that had the Senate, the elected assembly, the magistrates, and then they had what they call a consulship. All right. So the Senate is a Senate. Sounds familiar. Then you have the elected assembly. Who is our elected representatives? Oh, it's the House. Then you have the magistrates who had veto power. Oh, that's the judiciary. And then you had the consulship, which was 1 year. They only could serve for 1 year. And then after they finished with that consulship, they had to wait another 10 years before they could be consul again. Okay. Well, that's the executive branch. So they actually already had this system of government set up that's gone all the way into ours. It worked its way through basically the Greek states and then Great Britain, as they become smarter, and then eventually into constitutions. Rome had a constitution, okay, and that had to slowly be fixed over the years. So knowing all that, what happened then is not dissimilar to how we're founded and what we know now, or what we're going through now, And the three main reasons for the fall of Rome, or the Roman Republic, were actually pretty simple: economic, social, and political. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Turn on the news, one of the big thing was, and you're going to love this. So on the political side, the spoils of war, the war prizes, they went to most of the political elites. And if you think, what's that tell you? Let's translate that: military industrial contract, or military industrial complex. Yeah, and then let's see. How do we do that? We do that through war. It's a repetitive cycle. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we get our government to send us to war so that they can make money, and then it's just the recycle just continues, wash, rinse, repeat. We're seeing that today. It appears as if our government is just trying to get us into the endless war, so that they can cycle money in and out of the government and into their pockets. It's pretty bad. The elites, they would concoct legal arguments which thwarted upward economic mobility. And this caused social upheaval, which was polarized by a couple of guys called the Gracchus brothers. Not to get too deep, but these guys were some shysters. And so what we end up with is people in the government, okay, that in those days, government, it was like nobility. That was basically the government, was nobility, okay? Because like you said, you had the plebes and then you had the nobles. I can't remember what they called the noble guys.
Patricias or something like that?
The patricians, yes, the patricians. And so if you were of noble blood, you were going to end up in one of these three pieces of government, and you were going to be controlling something, and so the Gracchus brothers got smart, and they caused a lot of social upheaval because they used legitimate grievances, like you have the right to redress your government, right? Starting to sound, I translated that into America. So they actually, there was one where it was like land reform. They were trying to steal land from everybody, and people were buying into it. And this resorted to, it achieves their goals by making themselves richer and more powerful, but they had to violate the Roman Constitution to do that. And then, unfortunately, they also kind of promoted mob rule just to keep everybody's eye on something else, kind of like protests. I'm not sure if that's in the news these days.
Like I said in the beginning, 2,000 years and not a damn thing has changed. It's just how it happens.
Exactly. If you go into I can tell you stories, but if you go into the roots of it, it's basically, hey, we've got this great system. It's going to, these three different branches of government are going to keep everybody honest, and they all have the power to check each other. And it's going to be good for the people because only good decisions can come out of it. So now let's make these 35 rules. And then the smart guys with all the money go, I could use that rule in this situation to make this money. You know what I'm saying? And they just utilize the government to do whatever they wanted to do with it, as long as they had knowledge of it. And you got to remember too, with the plebeians, these weren't educated people. They didn't have scholars that they came up underneath. They had no, Roman men who were of noble blood had people that they came up underneath that were trained. Their nannies were master swordsmen and theologists. The plebeians, they shoveled horse crap. So they were already out of their wits. They had no idea these things were going on, and then the Roman soldiers show up and say, "By the way, you don't own this farm anymore."
Yeah. And going back to your military-industrial complex reference, it's the politicians being basically raised in that. We've got sort of the same thing. You've got the Bushes, you've got the Clintons, you've got the Kennedys. I mean, all of that. But these days, like back then, these politicians were wealthy people. Even our founding fathers were businessmen, wealthy people that wanted to forward their interests, which is why they got into politics. Same thing in Rome. But these days, it's more of the politicians don't get rich until they get into office. But it's these companies that are basically pulling the strings. These companies get these people elected so they can go in and do those companies' bidding. So it's the way things get done is different, but it's the end game is exactly the same. And it's not. That's why I say we're inevitably heading that direction, because it's not about the people anymore. It's not a republic for the people like it was in Rome. They decided to just scrap that. Sort of like Google saying, don't be evil. They're saying, don't be evil. They said, let's just get rid of that. That doesn't work anymore. Same type of situation. But there are so many similarities. I mean, this country is almost identical to the way that they had that set up back then, with the filibuster and the, all the different things. They added bits and pieces to try to fix some of the stuff. And I forget who said it. A republic, if you can keep it. Was that Ben Franklin or I don't remember who? What have you built for us?
I can't remember that. So what'd you guys come up with? A republic, if you can keep it.
Yeah. Which almost, they knew that, hey, this, we'll see how long this lasts. 200-300 years. I don't know. And the time frames of all this as well is different, because even though the Roman Republic lasted 500 years, the way that things are these days, it moves a whole lot faster. Back then, it may have taken a month to go to a different place and take over the territory. These days, we can get there in days. These days, taking over territory isn't on a battlefield anymore necessarily. It is diplomatic. We are all over the Middle East. So we may not have a flag planted in the ground over there. At least not on in the main capital. We got plenty of flags all over the place and bases and stuff like that. But that's how we're taking over territory these days. So it's interesting to me how all this stuff unfolded, and what happened. I think is the main point of all this is not the when things changed, and could this be 100 years from now? Maybe. Could it be 10 years from now? I guess it's possible. They would have if they tried to do something like that 10 years from now, they'd have a big fight on their hands, because there's still a lot of us left that like the way that this country could be and was founded. But what's to say in 50 years when we're all dead that the next crop is being trained to basically accept it? Like, we don't need that Constitution anymore. It's kind of pointless.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that I have a lot of faith in younger people. I will say younger people, probably in their 30s and 40s now. Because they say when you're young, you wear the blue tie, and you're very like, oh, the world's a great place. Make love, not war. Um, and as you get older and you realize that the world's not a great place, and that by the way, taxes suck and they keep going up, and how much do I really need to give to other people before I'm not the person who's enjoying the fruits of my labor? And so they start to put on that red tie. Um, the only people that wear the blue tie into their 60s and 70s are the people that are financially stable, that have made their money however they made it, and now the world won't affect them. They don't care that a gallon of milk is $3 or $4. They don't care, that their steak is now $50 for 2 prime cuts. They don't care about that because it doesn't affect them. But for the plebes, we care about that stuff, and there's always going to be the plebes. There's always going to be the plebeians, because someone has to turn that bolt, and someone has to hold security on your bank, and someone's got to clean up after you leave for the day, And those people don't have PhDs, so there's always going to be plebes, and they won't take it. They won't take it. I don't believe that we've got. And honestly, I used to have a real big thing for millennials. But I think as millennials became adults, they realized the error in their way and put on that red tie. So I don't think that we have a problem that way. I do think that people who wear blue ties think that we do have that problem, and they're kind of depending on it.
Yeah.
So that they can kind of create their own serf class, blind followers, paid protesters, the simple money, universal income. Let's just play video games and get fat. Hey, that's all that stuff sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah. Communism sounds fantastic.
Yeah. Until somebody asks you to do something, and then they tell you by force.
Yeah.
The government is the only people that can do that. So I don't think that we have that problem. I have hope for our younger generation.
Yeah, see, Lisa's son is during that you made me think of Lisa's son, because I used to be all over him about, watch gas prices, watch him just skyrocketed 2, 3, 4 years ago. Just watch and just all over him. And these days he's not as opposed to what I'm talking about anymore, but he's not willing to admit it. But you can tell the gears are turning a little bit more in his head about thinking for himself rather than what towing the company line. This is what this is what these people say, so this has got to be what it is. I don't have the time to actually go research and pay attention to it, so I'm just going to regurgitate that line. You start seeing those things, you move out of the house, you start paying your bills, and you start you start experiencing those things firsthand. That's when, and honestly, it doesn't really matter which side of the aisle you're on. You look at the Roman Republic and everything that happened, very little is us plebs. we're a footnote in history, regardless of which side we're on. These days, I don't even think there really is a side other than, in Washington anyway, it's the Uniparty. I don't think there really is. The only difference is like with the border, being wide open and everybody coming in. The only difference is when the Democrats have the gavel, basically they get to do whatever they want. When the Republicans have it, they have to gear back a little bit to make it look like they're doing the right thing. And then, so it's just a game, but it really doesn't matter. It's all the money passing hands, the corruption, the greed, all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. The same thing that happened in Rome with all the politicians and all the corruption that happened, all that stuff that goes on behind the scenes. We're secondary. All we need to do is just keep this machine running, because without a country, they can't line their pockets anymore. So they got to make sure we're at least happy enough to keep this thing going. One more thing too, you had mentioned the protest. Doesn't it seem like and I didn't pay much attention to the 70s, but it sure seems like this is the last couple of weeks is like, I mean, I could just see these, instead of the burkas and all that stuff, I just see the flower power and all that crap going on the college campuses. I mean, it's insane that we're where we are, the things that are happening. But then you look back at the 70s, and it's not like it's the first time.
Yeah. You know, so it's
you got to be careful on YouTube too,
because you kind of got to put your tinfoil hat on. In the local prepper Discord, shameless promotion, which is free. We were talking about this yesterday, and somebody took a snapshot of a list of all the college campuses in the United States yesterday that had a protest going on. Blew my mind. I thought it was only like 6 or 7 of them. There were over 30 colleges that had active protests simultaneously. That's not organic. That is not natural. Okay, that's what a lawyer would call intent.
Mm-hmm.
And when all of the tents that are in these little
green tents,
the little green tents that all say the Walmart camping logo on them, all identical to each other, all brand new in every place that they go. Yeah, someone is spending a lot of money. So the real question is like, where's the money? They say follow the money, but the real question when you start talking about money is who what's the word I'm looking for here? Who has the most to gain by the situation? It's not Hamas. It's not the PLO. It's not our government. It's not 20-something kids who barely know what's in the books, let alone what's in the world. The people who have the most to gain is actually Iran. Now, if you follow the breadcrumbs and you wear your tinfoil hat, so Iran funds all the proxy wars in the Middle East, right? Wouldn't it be great to strike out at the United States without actually striking out at the United States? So you throw a bunch of money at some nonprofits and those NGOs, and then they throw their money, and it basically all gets washed down to Walmart to buy you green tents.
Yeah.
Someone said, I just don't know if that's possible. And I said, one would think it would be slightly irrational for the U.S. government to send $150 billion in cash covertly in the middle of the night in an unmarked aircraft all the way to Iran to give to the Shah 8 years ago. But some say that didn't happen, but there's pictures. It did happen.
Yeah, so, and that's what I was talking about earlier, was all the behind the scenes wheeling and dealing and all of that. The borders, the amount of people that are coming over the borders. It's not I don't think it's a Republican Democrat thing. I think they all know exactly what needs to be done. I think a lot of this is intentional. The same thing with the protests. The same thing with ever since Obama, they started to change the whole dynamic and the thought process about being an American, right? Being proud to be an American. And I can't help but think, and who knows, again, I'll keep my tinfoil hat on, but I can't help but think that there's a lot of intentionality with this. And when you talk about how the Roman Republic went to a dictatorship and had to change things, maybe there are people in the know behind the scenes that are pulling these strings that know, and maybe it's not just the United States, maybe it is the whole World Economic Forum cabal that knows that things are going to change, and in order to make this change as smooth as possible, we need to destabilize, we need to get things done in the United States to make this more accepted. And I don't know, I mean, time will tell. Maybe that's just my prepper conspiracy brain readout of the whole situation, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit, because that's all for, like I said earlier, 2,000 years. Politicians just playing games, and the people behind the scenes doing things that we have no idea of what's really going on. We get, the red light, the cat chasing the laser, right? We get all this stuff that gets us distracted and gets us talking about this and that. But meanwhile, behind the scenes, I can't help but think there's this structured plan that is, whether you're talking about digital currency, whether you're, I mean, all sorts of different things that could be on the horizon. The whole World Economic Forum game plan. No, I think they could be setting it up for that change.
Yeah. Well, you know, things the way we do things now, there's a lot of similarities to the way the Romans, basically the fall of the Roman Empire, what caused it, things like that. There's some key people that are involved in it. But so, you know, one of the things that kind of set that whole thing on fire, and I don't know if it's covered in the book that you read, but I think I said earlier I was talking to you about the Gracchus brothers, and so one of them, Tiberius Gracchus, was murdered, and you know, this was the first time a Roman political leader was assassinated by other Romans. Okay. Now, if we associate that to ambush killings of police officers, okay, not the four that died this last week, you know, that was a felony warrant service. They were all roughed up. They knew they could get killed, but they were doing their jobs. That's completely different. I'm talking about these people that are just being randomly killed by citizens. Okay, so if you do that, if you think about during the last century of the Roman Republic, you know, violence was the preferred and sometimes the only way to advance a political agenda. And here's what I'll tell you. When those 4 police officers got shot and killed this last week, did you hear any screaming and yelling about gun control?
No.
Because it didn't follow their agenda. Okay. So civil control of the army was basically collapsed. And, you know, so the only guys at the top, they basically commanded the loyalty of the army. You remember when Trump was president, they were worried that he was getting too tight with the army. So they switched out the commander, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he turned out to be a giant turnburger, you know. And then now, and then what was it? The Secretary of Defense, he's an even bigger one. So they want to make sure that they have the loyalty of the military. See how they're structuring it, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and what it comes down to is that questions back then were no longer decided in the Senate, but on the battlefield. Once again, that perpetual war thing. And a lot of people don't know it, but the last 60 years of the Republic, there were 10 civil wars. It's insane.
Yeah.
10 civil wars, you know? And, you know, the common theme was, and think about this politically when I say it, the common theme was exploitation of chaotic situations by people that wanted power. Now, I'm going to throw a phrase at you, and you're going to have an epiphany. You ever heard the term, never let a crisis go to waste?
Oh, yeah, Rahm Emanuel.
You know, it's absolutely mind-blowing. You know, there are stories of, have you read about the triverament yet?
Yeah, wasn't that Caesar, Pompey, where they basically 3 guys decided to team up because the government wasn't doing what they wanted them to do.
Yeah, they took over Rome, not a joke. So you had Caesar, you had Crassus, and now Crassus, and he was the super rich guy, right? So he funded everything. Then you had Pompey, who was a very famous and very well respected general. You know, so and this was all very familial. These guys were friends, you know, and so, you know, Caesar is like, he's got great aspirations, but he's got to break a lot of rules to get stuff done. And you know, so Pompey basically, he married Caesar's daughter, so now this is a family thing, you know. What was it? Crassus. Casac, I always say his name wrong. You know, he bribed Caesar's way into the consulship in 39 BC. You know, Caesar passed all the laws that Pompey and Crassus wanted, and they just had a great time. You know, and that's what I'm saying. They called it the triverament. The trium is 3, and ver is for man. So basically, it was 3 men. You know, and this became an official thing. You know.
I think these days, when you look at that, these days it's like the CIA is BlackRock, Raytheon, whatever. I mean, all these people, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Behind the scenes, things are going on and decisions are being made that we have no choice in. And the fact that we get to vote on a few of these little minor details here and there is basically a show, and it makes us feel like we're part of this whole system. But I'll tell you what, the people that really are the ones with the whole lot of money, the ones that have the ability to put lobbyists in there, the ability to get these politicians elected that they know are going to run their agendas. That's who, and it's sort of the same thing as that shady crap that went on 2,000 years ago with 3 dudes that decided, I don't like what the government's doing. It's not helping us out. How are we going to get this to work in our benefit? And that's what they did. And that was shortly before he became Caesar.
Yeah. Well, it's mysterious too, because it's like, what do they call it? Bedfellows. Like these guys were friends until they were friends. They supported each other until they didn't want to support each other, and while Caesar was actually the consul, basically the chief, he had what they call imperium, which in today's word is immunity. Okay, so and we think about this immunity. The word immunity is kind of big. It's in the news if you haven't been paying attention, and so that meant that he couldn't be prosecuted while he was the consular. All right, so after 1 year, he basically had a target on his back. All right, and conveniently, generals also had imperium, so he got himself elected as to be a governor or a governorship of a province, which made him a general. So they couldn't do anything to him, all these little laws, all these little, I guess this is a perfect instance of people of knowing the law and knowing how the red tape is really rolled out, and the thing is, he did so, and ironically, because he couldn't be a consul, or he couldn't be the executive for another 10 years. He went on. He did 10 years worth of campaigning, and back then, campaigning meant like going to war. He was a general. He basically led the Gulf Wars. And so essentially, he was campaigning politically, showing off how cool and how great a job he can do, while simultaneously campaigning militarily, showing off how cool and how great a job he was doing.
Yeah.
The stink is that Crassus died during a military campaign, and Pompey became disloyal and got the Senate to rescind Caesar's governorship, making him vulnerable. Now, once again, we're back to breaking the Constitution. So Caesar's like, all right, screw it. 13 Legion, follow me. We're crossing the Rubicon. And this is what actually made him so famous in the eyes of the people, for actually like breaking that law. That would be like the 10 commandments of law. That would be, thou shalt not cross the Rubicon, with an army. And he did it, and it worked.
But in order for him to, you froze there a little bit. Sorry, I thought you were done. Go ahead. You just froze.
Okay. Well, let me close up with say, after all that, the Senate named Caesar. For the first time, he was elected as the dictator. All right. We translate it as dictator. All right. And then again, elected as dictator for life, fundamentally a king. That pissed off a lot of people, and that's where you get the picture of 23 senators with daggers out and Caesar on the ground going, no, and that's how it all ended. And that was actually the end of the Republic. They tried to, there was a couple of the guys that came after him. One of the guys seated himself and like, I'm the new dictator. Yeah. Okay, guys. And they let him run with it for a while. But it just became so corrupt, and all the senators that went after Caesar, they all kind of scattered to the winds and organized armies and tried to come back. And, I think was it Octavius finally was the end of the empire, the end of Rome, but why am I telling you that long drawn out story? It's actually pretty simple. The senators are only as good as the current issue. Our senators, we can love them, we can hate them. They've all got their flaws, but in the end, they're going to vote for a lot of stuff that pisses off the American people. You know, if you look at the last votes for, no, I'll just call it out. So House of Representatives, what was it? 702 FISA. He was the tiebreaker. This is the guy who's supposed to
Johnson,
be like the gatekeeper for all stupidity in the House of our Representatives. And I saw this briefing and it really scared me. And bro, I'm going to vote this way. And I'm here to tell you, bro, I've seen a lot of briefings at very high levels, and none of them ever made me change the moral character of who I am, ever.
Yeah.
So,
that's, again, the behind the scenes crap. There was more to that whole situation than that we are privy to. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Hey, you did touch on something a little earlier I want to get back to, is the 10 civil wars during this time period that we were talking about, just the very end of this. And some of these were because there were private armies that Rome basically allowed their own destruction, gave Caesar an army, Crassus an army, and they went out and plundered, and they could get richer by going out and killing people, basically, and going out and plunder. It wasn't the government coffers, it was theirs. And they got so big. But a lot of these civil wars were between two different factions, or just these armies, going through towns or whatever. But it is something I think we should be paying attention to. What that looks like, I don't know. I don't think if we had any sort of, small scale civil wars that are going on or things like that, I don't think it'll look like what the original Civil War looked like. But we could see things like that, and maybe not, fighting, maybe not the swords and shields, the guns and bullets and things like that, but that's a low key, I guess, or I don't know how to put it, a low key type Civil War situation where they've already got us pitted against each other. So it wouldn't take much to get it to the point where, kind of some of the stuff you're seeing on these college campuses today, but on a much bigger level.
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about would be what most of us would think of as a civil war between states, and how that would go down. That would be really, you'd have to do a lot of organizing, logistical issues. I mean, Amazon can only support so many wars, so it would be kind of tricky. But most people, when they think about civil war in America, in the modern Civil War, hopefully they're thinking about it correctly, but it would literally be the people against the government. Obviously our last one, and believe it or not, we had two, but our last one, or should I say our first one, it was more about, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the revolution. But the last Civil War, the last Civil War, it happened. But, it wasn't the people against the government, it was ideology, so they created their own government, and it was government against government. It would literally be state against federal government.
Hey, real quick, Stabbing Joe here in the chat. Low intensity conflict. That's the word I was looking for. Sorry, go ahead.
And LOC, or low intensity conflict. That's basically the focus of low intensity conflict is basically was born from jungle warfare, where it's limited contact. There's no decisive contact. There's no real winners. It's just a death of 1,000 cuts. But low intensity contact combat does not work when you have a populace that is fighting against its government, because the government is not going to fight at low intensity, and they're going to be looking for they're going to be in a defensive posture, and then they will strike out from wherever they're at, and they're just going to be going to blow things up. They're not going to be looking to hey, show of force, let's scare them. Maybe they'll say, okay, we're done being bad guys. We'll get back to work, massa. That's not what's going to happen, So, I mean, but I hate putting labels on the type of warfare, because in the end, it's people with boom boom sticks and that both believe that they're the heroes. So
well, and you mentioned earlier it'd be the people against the government, but there are plenty of people that agree with what they're doing right now. Shoot, even 25-30% of them think that Sleepy Joe's in there doing a great job. What about those people that are, against it, which they're, basically called Republicans these days? And those other people, what do you think sort of, is there a conflict that goes on between those two as well? So it's not just a state by state thing or a people versus the government thing. It's more of a, that, I don't want to go with neighbor against neighbor. That's not the right way to put it, but the different political ideologies.
Yeah, I'm tracking with you. I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's possible. And, one of the real reasons is in order to do those kind of things in the real world, you have to either be severely motivated or extremely pissed off. Yeah. And people on the left are neither. They're absolutely neither. Their biggest, anger is because
unless you're a college student,
I went down to Whole Foods and they didn't have my kombucha. Son of a bitch. I'm so mad. I'm going to go tell everybody on TikTok.
I'm getting on Yelp. Is the Yelp still a thing?
That's how angry and upset they get. Whereas if you go down to Bubba's house and you tell him his old lady's truck is parked at Danny's house, Bubba's going to go down there and either beat him to death or come damn close to it. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. I guess the big word is conviction. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think the left. Now the left would love the government to fly a couple of Apaches over and blow up the RNC headquarters with a Hellfire missile. They would love that and be like, yes, democracy. Yeah. And everybody on the right would be like, dude, we told you 1,000 times it's democracy. It's not democracy. It's a republic. Get it right.
Well, and that's the problem too, because, and this goes both ways too. Too much of a good thing is not a good thing. Too much left, too much right, and you run into massive problems. So as much as the right would love to, just completely do the same thing to them, and they would do the same thing, and they're completely okay with some of the tactics that are going on now, because it ultimately is going to, it's what they want, basically. Mm-hmm. But you've got to be careful about that, and that's the reason this country was set up the way it was. Because if you go too far in one direction or the other, and I don't care which direction it is, bad things happen. So and I guess that's why all of why Rome and why us and all these different civilizations end up going this way, is because people just sort of get lackadaisical about things. People want what they want, and I can't really blame people. And they think that their way is the absolute right way to get things done. And then eventually they get what they ask for. Same thing with the sanctuary cities and all the things that are going on right now. You get what you ask for eventually. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it's one of those things with the civil wars and I absolutely agree with you. I never really thought about it that way, but somebody's has to be pretty damn motivated. If it was the government going against the left or the government going against the right, the other side would sit back and watch and not get involved.
Yeah. This is their world. This is their world.
Yeah. But it all ends up hurting us in the long run. Maybe not even necessarily me and you, but our children, our grandchildren. It's all, I think, just slowly starts to erode away. And the more you let it erode away, the frog in the boiling water type thing, the more that it just becomes completely different than the way it used to be, which leads me to sort of the world, sort of the idea that the world has, or the Western world anyway. You've got South America, you've got Europe, you've got Australia, you got us that they're trying to get into the fold. All these people, instead of like being Rome against the Gauls or whoever, it's almost like everybody's sort of creating this, I don't know, pact or whatever, to sort of have the same sort of governance over not just a country anymore, but all these different populations. What do you see as far as where that goes in the future, as far as this UN coordination? Maybe it's not the UN, maybe they call it something else. Maybe it's not the World Economic Forum, but this cooperation how far does this all go between all these different westernized countries to the point where the Constitution of the United States just sort of has to be scrapped because it gets in the way?
There's a lot of people out there that would love to see it go away. They really would.
There is,
because,
yeah, unfortunately.
Well, it's a hindrance to their agenda. It's slowing them down. When you have the press secretary for the White House, her chronic catchphrase is, "They're in the way. They're in the way. They're in the way." That should be telling you something. Though that's emotionally driven, not factually driven. And as far as any type of world control, yeah, I don't. Guys, I'm telling you right now, the one thing that keeps us safe is the Second Amendment. It's the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
In every single dictatorship, from back to the Romans all the way up to now, once they disarm the population, the tyrannical rule begins, because there's no way to fight them back. I mean, unless you're Australians, and that's how the Australians created their country. They actually took one gun from a soldier and then realized that there's more of us than there are of them, and that's how they took their country. It's that's the realization. It's the Second Amendment. That's why it's always under attack. That's not hyperbole. That's not my opinion. That's why they're doing it. It's got nothing to do with the amount of people killed. Like I said before, the freaking 4 cops get killed. No one screamed gun control one time. Not one time. It's if it's not part of their agenda, they don't want anything to do with it. They don't talk about it. They don't want to get trapped by it. They don't want it to become a political soundbite, because that's all this is to them. They've completely weaponized politics. The governments have completely weaponized the legal systems, and the chances of them becoming dominant is always dependent on the armed population.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'll say on that.
And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is if they try to, like the things that happened in Rome where they went from a republic to a dictatorship, if they tried to do that in the next decade or so, probably not going over well for just the exact reasons that you just mentioned right there. But eventually, if they can sort of whittle away at the Second Amendment, if they can eventually get people's minds to change over the course of a couple of decades or so, that people don't think about it the way that they should, or the way that we think about it now, then it's going to be something that it's a speed bump rather than a roadblock at that point. And that's what concerns me. And that's the fight they've been fighting for 40, 20, 30, however many years. And that's the fight they're going to continue to fight, because it's one that gets headlines, gets them votes, gets all the things that they want. And, they can say the stupidest things in the world, and most people have no idea about it because they don't know anything about guns. But eventually it gets to the point where you say, you tell a lie enough, eventually it becomes the truth. And you say something enough, eventually people are just going to be okay with it. And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, oh crap, how did we get here? And I think that's the thing that concerns me. Will it happen in my life? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. The Second Amendment anyway.
Well, gun ownership is distinctly American. Lots of countries have them. You can there's several countries where you can have your own guns. If you live in Norway or Sweden, a lot of the people actually have full up machine guns. I'm not talking about automatic weapons. I'm talking about machine guns, because they've been trained to use them, and their governments require them to have them. It's not a joke. But what was I going to say? I was going to say something. I was going to say something powerful. That's what I was going to say. The Second Amendment has stood the test of time because, one, it was written so well that those on the left have to argue the meaning of it based off of the placement of a comma.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the interpretation of what it meant then versus what it means now, and it was never meant to be that. And And then anybody who studies anything about the Second Amendment immediately tells them how stupid they are for saying that, and then they disappear. And some other moron comes onto the stage a couple months later, screaming the same ridiculousness. But it was written so well, and it's so fundamental to the American way of life that it can never go away. I'm not worried about it, because its focus is to stop a tyrannical government. They've stopped listening. Now we have to do something about it. That's why. That's why.
Well, and that's basically the whole premise of this show, right? Is talking about things that are possible. Not saying any of this stuff is going to happen in the next 10 years or so, but eventually this is the direction that all empires and civilizations tended to go. And the fact that we were built, basically our framework is the Roman Republic, the Roman Republic. That is exactly how our country was built. So it's just, I think if you should look at the things that happened then and maybe not go too overboard with it about how this is going to happen and that's going to happen because look how this happened and it only took this many years and all of a sudden this and that. But if you pay attention to it and you look, you can see some of the same BS going on. And what does that BS lead to? Which leads to another thing, which leads to basically Caesar taking power, or whoever. The left would say Donald Trump wants to do that crap. The right would say, and I even said Obama was the person that scared me the most because he could have done something like that as much as people loved him. Not that he did a whole lot of good things, in my opinion, but people loved him and still do.
Yeah,
and still could be running the show behind the scenes. So the shadow Caesar, the deep state Caesar. But yeah, it's just, I think we don't, who knows what the hell's going to happen. But I think those things that happened back then, I think those are the things that we should be preparing for, which is sort of the main point of this whole show is you're preparing for the situations that might happen with civil unrest, with civil war, with hyperinflation and, economic struggles and things like that. Those things that happened between, the last 100 years of the Roman Republic, those 10 civil wars that you talked about, all the economic problems, all those things are the things that we should be working on preparing for, not necessarily the bombs dropping or crap like that. Not to say that that's not possible, but I don't know. These jackholes that are in power want to stay in power. So I don't see that as, there is something they're really willing to pull that trigger on because they all like their little seat at the table. And they don't want to lose that. So what are your thoughts on that as far as preparing for the in-between stuff, not the big events that make the history books?
I always tell people that they need to have at a minimum 3 weeks worth of supplies, water, food, security, in that order. Those are the very basics. Those are my personal pillars. But as far as, it's difficult to prepare for anything because you have to look at it realistically. And here in America, it's either going to be an economic issue or that will likely lead to famine. It's either going to be a political issue that will likely lead to war, which could lead to famine. And so just having enough food and supplies for your family for an extended period of time is just a smart thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are like, I'm good for 3 weeks, or yeah, okay, great, dude. I tell people all the time, I've got a year's worth of freeze-dried food under my bed. I'm not joking. Long-term, short-term, interim, fill your pantry, rotate your pantry, live with food and water the way we lived with food and water before we became an industrial nation, because that's how we made it. That's how they made it through all the bad times. Learn skills, learn to can. If you buy 10 pounds of chicken, you throw it in your freezer and you go on vacation and you come home and found out that the power was out for 3 days, all the food in the freezer is gone. But if you buy that 10 pounds of chicken and you learn to can it and then put it on your shelves, when you come home, you still have the 10 pounds of chicken. It's just that easy. It's skill-based. It's common sense. Learn to hunt. If this when the world goes bad, I'm going to go to the woods and I'm going to live off deer meat and rabbit meat. It's like, yeah, well, you don't understand. During the Great Famines, there was more than
You'd be
one.
eating tree bark.
All of the deer were hunted almost to extinction. That's why people down south eat roadkill, okay? Because their family knew how to do that, because the deer were nowhere to be found. You're not going to be the great white North hunter. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, and you think back to all the economic issues back in the Roman days, BCE and all that. It was probably, and I don't know, I haven't read into it much, but I assume that it would be a whole lot different for them back then, because they probably were farmers. I mean, I'm sure some went to the market and did things like that, but you had to go get your own water and things like that. Whereas these days, I think something like that would have a much bigger impact, because nothing is local anymore. Absolutely nothing. And people don't grow their own food unless you live by a farm, unless you live by a chicken hatchery or something like that. Good luck, because it's not like that anymore. So while it might have been or it probably was a big struggle back then, I don't think it compares to what it would be like these days, because at least initially, but if there were supply line issues and things like that, it wouldn't take long. It wouldn't take very long at all for things to just get chaotic.
Every prepper's goal should be to become some form of homesteader. I'm not saying go buy 50 acres and plow it. That's not what I'm saying, because you can grow food on very small pieces of land. I know people that grow food on the balcony of their apartment. Your goal should be a homesteader in some way, shape, or form. But if you can't do that, then you should be using what they call Western prepper techniques. We stopped canning goods in our homes because businesses started canning food for us. Well, they still do that at a very low rate. And there's nothing saying that you can't go buy a $55, 4-level Walmart stainless steel shelf, put it up, and then cover that thing with canned goods. There's nothing saying you can't do that, and those are things you should be doing. And then as you think you need more, then you go get more. But the bottom line, like you were just saying, Dale, is things are very different now, but the mindset should be the same as it was back then.
Yeah.
They did have to go get their water, but they knew where their water was, and they knew it was a good source. They weren't like, oh, I'll open the faucet. Well, when the faucets quit working, what do you do now? Well, oh, crap, they don't even know where a well is. They're done. It's over with.
Yeah. When the grid's down and you can't, you can't order HelloFresh or have Walmart deliver crap to your front door or whatever. Yeah. It's going to be a rude wake up call for a lot of people. All right. I've coughed like 5 times now. My throat's all itchy. So I think that's a sign for me to shut the hell up. So I think we're going to get out of here tonight. One more time, let everyone know, because it's been an hour since you talked about it, but you've got prep stock coming up. Let everyone know where they can find it. Let everyone know where they can find you. And I will make sure and leave all those links in the show notes and the description when I make this an audio podcast and all that stuff. But go ahead and pip yourself out as much as you want to now.
God, I feel like such a hooker. Okay, so all right, so prepstock.net. Make sure you guys go there. It's going October 12th through the 13th, Nebo, North Carolina. Let's see. It's a camping event. No, I can tell you a lot more. We're going to have everybody there. We're going to have all sorts of people. It's going to be everything from canning classes, leadership, building your own supply chain, the use of force. We got a guy who's nationally certified to teach use of force. We're going to have McDowell County Rescue coming in, going to be teaching us about wilderness rescue. And we're actually have Dr. Amanda Cartwright. You guys need to look her up. She's going to be coming in and tell us how to use herbs medicinally. She's a real doctor, okay? And then we're going to have a barter town too. If you guys don't know what that is, you need to look that up and find out what it is. We got Rusty Shackelford coming in to teach Communications 101. Over. And we've got the gun guy who's going to teach us a little bit about basic map reading and orientation. We've got B-Man Jay coming in to talk to us about beekeeping. The old local prepper is going to teach you about bug out bags and how to build a Faraday cage. And we've got a Jester, my partner from It's Doomsday podcast. B-Man Jay is a bit of a kung fu artist. A lot of people don't know that. But he's going to be whipping Jester around like a little rag doll for everybody's viewing entertainment.
Yeah.
At the end of all that, we're going to have what we're calling Prepper Story Time. Now, Prepper Story Times is where we're just going to get some chairs and put them like in front of you, and all the people that are still available that were up on that stage over those 2 days are going to sit there, and we're going to answer all your questions. You're going to actually get the opportunity to get the information that we may not have covered or you just always wanted to ask. Once again, Nebo, North Carolina, October 12th through the 13th. LocalPrepper.net. It's all there. It's all there. I know I built the website. It's all there.
Yeah, Brandon had mentioned something like that the other day when we were talking in our group. Is the getting out and physically meeting people rather than the digitally thing. I just think is something I need to try more at doing, but something that it's one of those things. Yes, you can get online, you can talk to people and all that, but it's something, those memories and the stuff you learn from other people by sitting there, drinking a beer, whatever, smoking or whatever you smoke, and just talking about prepping and all that different stuff. You learn a lot more that way. And I think you retain a lot more as well. And then when you've got all the people with the different skill sets and things like that, it's just so valuable. So yeah, like I said in the beginning, I do want to try to get to one of these, not the conventions inside a building or whatever. I've got plenty of trinkets and gadgets. I want to get out and meet people and things like that. And that sounds like
if we do actually pull off the prep stock, I don't know what we're calling it, plus, premium, platinum, whatever it is, we're going to actually have a very super organized, invitation only prep stock in a while. I'm not saying when, it's still in the planning, but you definitely you're on the list. You're on the list, Dan. You're on the list.
All right. Well, that's it for tonight, everyone. I was reading through the comments, and I think I think half the people have already left anyway, so we might as well get out of here too.
Okay. If you have not signed up, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, I need like 6 to get 5,000. I've been stuck at needing 6 for like a month.
Yeah, head over. Like I said, the link is in the description. Head over to Local's YouTube channel. It's got a lot of cool stuff on there. Some really cool guests. He talked about Jester today too. Really knowledgeable people. Really cool channel. So, and that's one thing we didn't get into. Maybe I'll have to get you on later on too. But talking about AI, have you noticed? I know I'm going to talk 5 more minutes here, but have you noticed on YouTube there are a bunch of new crap prepping channels out there, a lot of AI, a lot of people that are using AI to my plea to everyone out there that if you see one, that's great. Get your information from the real deal. And that would be all all those of us that have been doing this for a while, all those of us that are that are actually living the lifestyle, not somebody that plugs in something into Chat GPT and it spews out some of the regurgitated crap that people have said for the longest time. Get it from the horse's mouth, I suppose.
Yep. And honestly, most of the stuff that's out there that's AI generated is from other people's channels. That will literally download the transcripts from YouTube, change them a little bit, run that through an audio processor that actually gives you the English voice, or what was it? Text to script, text to voice.
To speech.
Yeah, and then they have the soundtrack, and then they just say, AI, do me a favor. I want 400 AI pictures generated and they know how long the script is, over a 4-minute and 20-second video. And then the AI makes the video, and then they just put the speech over it, and they throw it on there, and you think, wow, that's really cool. And they really just stole somebody else's stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And we all know how bad AI sucks. Yeah, it's great for what it is, and it's not artificial intelligence anyway. It may be artificial, but it's definitely not intelligence. But it's all just regurgitated information. So if there's a bunch of wrong information about something, it's going to regurgitate wrong information, and it's the same thing. Yep. So just pay attention to where you're getting your information. I'm gonna do a video here in the future about some of my favorite YouTube channels, just to give people ideas about who to go watch. You talked about Southern Prepper 1 earlier. You've got practical. I mean, I'm not going to go through them all, but a lot of different channels that they really know their stuff, and they're going to give you good information. So, yep. So with that, again, I do this every show. I say we're out of here 3 times, and then finally 20 minutes later we get out of here. But we really are this time. Everyone that's still sticking by, I totally mean it this time. We are getting out of here. Local Prepper, I appreciate you joining in this week. Always fun to sit and talk with you. If anytime you want to do this in the future, I'm game. It's always fun to just sit and BS about prepping and other stuff going on.
Most definitely.
Everyone in the chat, appreciate y'all joining in today. But until next time, take care and prepare, everyone. We will talk to you later if I can figure out these buttons. Anyway, see you later, everyone.